Episode 67, How to Stay in Your Own Lane When It Comes to the Relationship You Have with Your Teen, with Coach Heidi Benjaminsen.
Welcome to Latter-day Life Coaches, the podcast where each episode is a conversation between me, Heather Rackham, and one of my amazing coach colleagues. Each coach here is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and certified through the Life Coach School. Together, we have one main goal, helping you live your best life no matter what. You ready for this conversation with the coach? Here we go.
We all want to have a good relationship with our children, but relationships between children and their parents can often become strained during the teen years. We often associate this strain to teens being rebellious, but really they are just wanting autonomy. What we have to learn as parents is to release the control on our teen and let them take control of their own life. This is difficult, but will make all the difference. On today's episode, Coach Heidi Benjaminsen talks about how to do this and the wonderful results that both you and your teen can experience as you each stay in your own lane.
I'm excited today to be joined by Coach Heidi Benjaminsen.
Hello.
My sister's name is Heidi. So Heather and
very
Heidi,
nice.
I feel like we're having a conversation that I have.
I know. I was
frequently.
called Heather all through elementary school. So yeah, Heather
That
and
is
Heidi.
so funny. And my sister,
I
will get called Heidi, and I just assume it's because people know that she's my sister, but people who don't even know her will
I know.
call
It's
me.
funny. Those are two names. Yeah.
Guess so. Interesting. Okay. Conversation for another day, apparently. Well, Heidi, I'm so happy to have you here. And before we get started, I would love for you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and how you came to coaching and who you work with.
Okay, sure. Yes. Thank you so much, Heather, for having me here. I am so glad all these resources are getting out to so many people. So I'm a confidence coach for mothers of teenagers. A little bit about myself. I grew up in Maryland, then went to BYU, served a mission, but I've lived in Boston now 27 years. And I myself have 3 teenagers. I've been certified with the Life Coach School, did that about 3 years ago, and have a advanced certification with Jody Moore. And I just absolutely love coaching, love these tools, have seen how they have helped me so much. And how I came to coaching, I came a very interesting route. I've just always had a lifelong interest for like our brains, emotions, like social interactions. My degree at BYU was in sociology. I didn't really know what I was going to do with it, but just knew that there was something in that was so intriguing for me. I then went and worked in business for a management consulting company before I had kids. And what then happened about the time that I started having children is that I started making really significant changes in my own health and for myself, and I had been overweight. That was something that I had struggled with for a really long time in my life. And at that time, the changes that I was making, it wasn't just what I was doing, but I started making really significant changes with what I was thinking and what I was believing about myself. I was really changing my identity and who I wanted to be. And so then naturally, my actions and my body and things like that, there were natural changes, positive changes that came because of that. But I knew at that time, the changes I was making were really in my head, all of those kind of thinking changes. So I was one of those people that as I had children, I would then start the next pregnancy lighter than the other one, kind of the reverse of what's maybe more typical. So people would then I kept it off for a very long time and still have. And everybody would be then asking me for a very long time, like, well, what did you do? How have you made these changes? And so for years, I would tell them what I thought they were wanting the answer to be, like, oh, I did this or I did that. But every time I was thinking, you're asking me the wrong question. And I'd be thinking, it's not what I did, but it's what I was thinking that changed. It was what I was believing. So I did that, and still that's been a huge transformation for myself as my children became teenagers and I started to see, at one point they're going to leave the house. I just had this real prompting that I know was the spirit working with me for many years of like, you can do more. Like you can do more. And I would just kind of watch other people in their professions and knowing maybe I'd like to have my own business, but also being introspective, like what are my gifts and how can I help people? And all at the same time, people kind of asking me these questions like, well, how did you do it? How did you make these changes? And then several years ago, I found the CTFAR coaching model through Jody Moore and Brooke Castillo of the Life Coach School. And then all of those puzzles really came, the puzzle pieces came together. And it was like, oh, I now have an answer for that question that so many people have been asking me. How did you do it? I have this way I can now teach it. And I now have this community and this group, and I have a way that I can really let my gifts shine. And I can also really create this purpose. I could see I didn't, as my kids left the house, I didn't want to be a real insecure mom who was like hovering over them and really needed to feel like my value and me thinking I'm a good mom is dependent on them doing all these certain things or being that. I didn't want that. I could see that wasn't going to work well. It wasn't going to turn out well for me or for them. And so, when I found this and I then have now been able to, develop so many of my own tools and stuff to help mothers of teenagers really get their own power over themselves, for them to really anchor themselves. I do work some, weight loss with some of my clients. Often though, the weight loss is really just a symptom of us not having the confidence in these other areas, like us using food to, just numb from these other issues. So I work with mothers of teenagers. Some, the kids are a little younger, maybe some they've like left the house, but it's really women who want to show up different, who want to feel different. And it's awesome. I absolutely love it.
I love that you could recognize, because I don't know that I would be able to recognize before I kind of had these tools in my tool belt, that it was your thoughts that were creating the change for you. I don't know that I would have, in fact, I know I wouldn't have recognized that it was thoughts that were creating change or creating the results that I was getting in my life. So I just think it's fantastic that you were aware enough to recognize that. And it is that simple. That's the thing that's so fantastic about it. It sounds so simple, but until we really become aware of it,
and until it like is super conscious and it's something that we really want, right? Like it's something like we're intentional, we're conscious of it. Of course, for me, there was an element of, I do want to change my behavior here, but at the same time, I want to know it's possible, to change, and who I've identified as someone who, isn't this way. Well, let me start choosing to believe I can be this other way, or these things are possible. So yeah, I credit that to the fact that the changes have been permanent, or of course there's always fluctuations, but like that's when real change happens versus kind of giving people like shortcut actions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So good. Okay. So you work with women or mothers of teenagers. Mm-hmm. Do you find, I'm curious if you find, is it women that are coming to you with help because of their daughters or for their sons, or is it pretty equal across the board? Like what's harder?
I would say it's equal. Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say it's a good 50-50 split.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good. I just was like, ooh, is there one that's heavier than the other? I'd be really curious to know.
That's funny. Yeah. I'm going to say it's even. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I have 3 daughters and 1 son, and I really can't say that one gender was harder or easier than the other. I hear that often from people, but
I think they're different. I know I have 2 girls. I know I have 2 sons and then a daughter, and I feel like it's different. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's talk about some tools, some ways that you help your clients, mm-hmm. be calm and confident as mothers of teenagers.
Yeah. Because what often happens is that, we have our children and somehow we figure out there are books out there for how to help them in the early years. And I think we're all kind of surprised as they become teenagers that those strategies that worked for us for such a long time no longer work, which is actually very developmentally appropriate because our kids are now going through these huge changes themselves and they need to become independent people and they need to kind of push different boundaries and stuff. So it really creates this situation where we have to, even more than ever before, really have our own back and start to all the mothers start to question, am I doing the right thing? These are typical things that I hear. Like, I want to know that I'm making the right choice. Really, all of us, and I'm going to include myself in this, we also want to know everything's going to be okay with our kids. When they're teenagers, we're just in the middle. And sometimes it's a very messy middle. And so helping women understand like where that hope's going to come from and that you can create the hope yourself. You don't need to wait for them to make the changes. Very much that is how people come. So, they're teenagers, they're wondering like how, all of a sudden I have this hormonal child, and I have developed many tools. I want to share one today with the listeners of how we can I equate it to they're on this teenage emotional roller coaster. And often they are going to want to give us like a ticket to get on, and we have to stay anchored. We cannot get on it with them. And one of the ways that we do that, and I teach my clients, is for us to really think of us and our kids, and it can be us and actually anyone in our lives, of like, we have to stay in our lane. So I teach it that there's 3 lanes that all of us have in the world. There's our lane, then there's everyone else's lane, which that can then be our teenager. It could be a spouse, it could be employer, but it's everyone else. And then the 3rd lane is God's lane. All those things that just none of us have control over. So in our lane, the things that we are responsible for, we're responsible for what do we believe? We're responsible for what we are thinking, because we really don't know what another person's thinking. We're responsible for noticing and processing our emotions. We are responsible for our actions and our reactions. We are responsible for what our needs are. Like, so often we'll be like, oh, well, that person needs to take care of this need, or I need this. And we wait for someone else to like read our mind. Well, no, other people, they're dealing with their lane, which has their own obstacles, which has their own everything. We're the ones that know better than anything what we need. I know that every year I need new running shoes. So every year for Mother's Day, I go out and buy myself another pair of running shoes that I want and wrap it up for my family to give to me, because I know that I need that. And I'm happy to fill that need kind of for myself. In our lane, we're responsible for developing our gifts, for like knowing what are our strengths and our weaknesses. We're responsible for us deciding if we've made the right decisions. It's often we do want to look to other people, and it's great to ask other people for opinions and to talk with people. Like, of course we do that. That's a really, really useful thing to do. But when it's at nighttime and it's quiet and it's just our mind running, we have to realize like, that's my job to decide, like, I made the right choice, and I might get new information and I might change what I'm doing. I might change some structure, some consequence. I might change something, but that's okay. That doesn't mean what I did before was like wrong.
It's a hard one.
It's very hard.
It is a hard one to own our choices and make decisions.
That is like one of, I would say, almost everyone that comes to me on a consult. It doesn't really matter kind of what it is, but that is a skill that takes time to look inward, not outward, for that, not just validation of our worth, which that is another thing in our lane, but also just that validation of like, I really think I'm making the right decision, because only we as mothers know intimately what's going on in our home and for our children. Now, of course, we don't even know everything about them, but more than anyone else in the world, we do know some of the things they're struggling with. And so we have to have our back that, I'm making the right decision. I think this pandemic has made a lot of us like really wonder, am I doing the right thing? I know a lot of moms, there's there's health issues in their family and they have to maybe do something different than how their neighbor does it, just as a small example, and realizing like, it's okay. I have to know I've made the right decision and somebody else might not understand that.
I think it's a trust, right? Like we work really hard to try to trust our teenagers, and we really have to offer that same. It's learning to trust ourselves. Like there's a trust there that I think, to use your terms, like staying in our lane also means that we learn to trust ourselves, trust that we can stay in our lane and we'll be okay.
Trust that we can stay in our lane, trust that when we go out of our lane, which I'm going to talk about some different ways, we do swerve. We all have these human brains. We're going to worry, we're going to have fear, and then trust that, okay, I can get back, and trust that we can grow, and trust that we can make mistakes. That was the next thing I was going to say. Like in our lane, like we have to understand we're going to make mistakes. And that's okay. Like often we're so busy. This is one of the biggest ways in which we're swerving all over the road. And just like if we're on a 3-lane highway, if we're trying to like dart everywhere to like solve all these problems for everyone else, and also try to solve the snowstorm or whatever is really in God's lane, we cause all these accidents, which are generally emotional accidents, right? And realizing like, hold on a second, I need to be back here. I need to be focusing on what I have control over, and I need to trust and know I can make mistakes here in my lane. Other people are going to make mistakes, and that's okay. Like that's actually part of the plan. That's how we learn, because we also learn by how we're going to then repair those cracks in our lane. Another thing in our lane is to like ask for help too, if we need it. Another way that gets us back to our lane, like our job is, and everyone gets to choose kind of what they feel like is their responsibility with their family. Everyone doesn't always have, maybe they get to choose they're going to do something different. Most though, our job is to teach and support and love and guide and be an example, and to really understand like that's what my lane is. And that's how I want to then judge myself. Did I do those things? And I need to now let my teenager or whoever that other person is, like let them be in charge of what they're going to do with it, what they're going to create with their life, what results do they want? How are they going to maybe fix some mistakes? But I have to come back to my lane of like, wait, this is how I want to guide them. This is how I want to teach them. I'm realizing that's the only thing as my kids start going off to college, which they already started this year, realizing, okay, now like I did teach them these things. It's now we have this kind of different relationship. I want to teach and guide, and I want to have hope of how they're going to solve whatever kind of comes up for them. And the last couple of things in our lane is being considerate. So on the road, we do want to be considerate of other people. We want to be kind of watching what's going on. As humans, we do want to maybe be aware if this other person is struggling, right? But it's one thing to be considerate and want to be another fellow human who can like really be empathetic and compassionate. And it's a whole nother thing to be like, hey, you're going through all these problems. Let me come and solve all these problems for you. And we actually don't have the best tools even to solve other people's problems in their lanes. Like they're the ones that actually can see the potholes and can see the cracks. And often I find we do that swerving to try to fix other people when we're also generally trying to avoid what's going on in our lane. Mm-hmm. The reality is everything in our lane, everyone else is responsible for this for themselves. And one of the biggest things that we always have to come back to for our own lane is I'm responsible for liking myself. Like I'm responsible for how much love can I also have for other people. If I like myself, if I'm willing to do the work to grow my own self-esteem, to appreciate myself, to validate that these things are really important, I then have more to give other people. It's so common for us to maybe look to our children in their lane and think, oh, okay, so in the terms of coaching, their actions are then going to create my self-esteem or whatever. And how like that's an inappropriate way. Like our teenagers have enough that they're carrying in their lane. They don't need to have the burden of our self-esteem and just our validating that we've done a good job. So that's a long way to describe that's everything that we are responsible for. If we focus on those things, we then show up as confident women, as confident mothers, and realizing everything that I just said to you, everyone else is responsible for that for themselves. You know,
that's how they stay in their lane. Like they manage those things for themselves and do
right.
those things. Yeah.
Right. And we can project confidence to them like, hey, I'm confident you have the skills to be able to handle what's going on in your lane, even if there are accidents, even if you make mistakes. Like that's one of the biggest ways that we as mothers just are control freaks all over the road, is that we forget that there are going to be mistakes. There are going to be times when things just aren't going great, or our kids don't listen to us, or they don't do what we think they're supposed to do, and realizing, oh, okay, nothing's necessarily gone wrong here. Like, how do I now want to respond? And let me get back in my lane. How do I want to show up for that child? So, and I have
this is bringing such a great visual for me, because my youngest just got her driver's license.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. And I'm thinking, I mean, so that I've been through this 4 times, right? And this is my last child, and she's got her driver's license. But I'm thinking about all the times that I've like panicked as she's like turned off onto the road, and I'm like, get off the shoulder and get back into your lane. And I'm watching and I'm thinking about the reactions that I've had and how that so much parallels to motherhood, right? Like there's so many times in my life where I've had a reaction that I didn't really need to have, because if I would have just allowed them to learn from that action, from whatever it was they were doing or not doing, if I could have just stayed in my own lane and worried about me, my reaction would have been so different.
Right. And I think driving, like, even though this analogy is like staying in your lane, like my 2 sons are now drivers, and every time I was the primary one kind of teaching them how, and I wanted to be this calm because I knew it would be contagious, right? I knew, like, if I can be really calm, that's how I wanted them to be. I actually don't want a stressed out driver driving me anywhere. Right. Yeah. And so like having to really be like, oh, wait a second, like, let me be calm. Like it's all going to be okay. So yeah.
That is a contagious thing, even in just not just in a driving situation, but even just as mom. I can just remember when I started relaxing a little bit and staying in my own lane more, my stress level was so different. Like the calmness in my house changed too. Like it's contagious. And
it is contagious.
We're able to show up the way we want to. And I think our kids are more able to show up the way that they want to, which actually ends up being the way we kind of want them to show up. So it kind of ends up being a great.
It is like we allow them. Yes. We kind of project confidence to them that they can solve their problems. I feel like confidence and calm, both of those things are contagious. And it does, like, that really is the secret. Like a lot of my clients come to me, they really want their kids to change. I understand that. I would love the same thing too. The secret is when we change, our kids do change too. The people around us see that when we do our work to really get back in our lane, there is just this confidence we project that other people can handle either what's going on for them, or they know I can come and talk to mom. Like she understands that, or she's now this calm person. She's not going to freak out. If we do freak out, which I have freaked out about things, then that's okay. Part of our lane is growing and apologizing and saying, hey, I didn't handle that great. I'm going to try again. Things like that. And I think that really matters to them. So the third lane that none of us have any control over. And this is just where we have to realize, like, I'm worrying about things that I have zero control over. Like that's the weather, wars, natural disasters, pandemics. Like, and I also think like miracles and tender mercies that come into our lives. Like, I think we need to just kind of let Heavenly Father do what he's going to do with our life, and that's where the faith comes in. And sometimes that faith and uncertainty is uncomfortable, but that's how life really is. And I think in terms of like our families too, it's God's lane is also like what our capabilities are, and even the genetic makeup of ourselves and our children. Are there predispositions for weaknesses or certain strengths? And just kind of understanding, like, I'm going to do as much as I can to love and to teach and to guide, but having that faith that there's someone else that knows more. And
Yeah, and always assuming, and I think this is the piece that's important for me, is just to always assume that he has and know that he has my best interest at
yes,
heart, right? Like
yes,
and that's where that hope and that trust and that peace comes from, is in no matter what's happening that's outside of my control, he's always working in my favor, always, always.
yes. Yes, absolutely. And knows better than us and can solve these things better than us. And maybe I'm not going to see the solution for a long time. Maybe I'm not going to see why this happened. And if we can just release some of that control and just understand there's something else working and it is working in our favor, like us just believing that and getting back in our lane of like, yes, I want to believe this is all going to work out and it might be better than I even anticipated.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is a beautiful thing for us to be thinking to get us back there. So we're going to all swerve, right? I mean, we love our children,
Yes.
right? Like
Yes.
there's going to be worries, there's going to be fears. Like our lower brain is always looking out for the negative. And I think another thing for us to understand, and I teach all my clients this, is like when there's an absence of information, our brain on default, our lower brain fills it in with something negative. So if your child goes out, they say they're going to be home at 10, and then they're not home at 10, and they're not home at 10:30 and at 11, our brain fills that in with, they've been in an accident, let me start calling hospitals. It doesn't fill it in with, oh, they stopped to bring bread to this person, or kind of whatever it is. So when we can at least kind of understand like that is really what's going on, that also helps us, like, really
Yes.
anchor and get back. But
And
when
we
we,
don't have to believe the things that our brain offers up to us. I think that has been
yes,
such an important thing for me to recognize. Yeah, my brain's going to offer me these things and I don't have to believe
I
them.
don't have to believe it. I don't have to like sit and bring them into my house and entertain them. Like they're going to be there. Now, what do I want to do? So, like, understand we're going to be swerving. That's okay. Just like in life, like there are times we're going all over, but there are ways, the more we can get back in our lane and do it the quicker as possible, that's when we just have more peace and we have more control. And it's good for our kids. Like, I'll tell you, so this is an analogy our family has used from before I was doing coaching formally. And there are times my kids will say to me, Mom, get back in your lane. Like, and that's a great thing. Like that's okay.
Yeah.
Or like all the kids will sometimes try to parent each other. And we're like, you're in the parenting lane. Get out of that. Understand like those things are going to happen. So one of the ways, like if we're feeling maybe a lot of stress, we're feeling anxious about something really going on, and we need to kind of anchor ourselves. We know I don't like what's kind of happening inside of me. One of the best questions we can ask, well, I have a bunch of questions here, but one is like, is this really a problem? Now, the answer to that might be yes. Like there are going to be some things that it's like, okay, like this is a problem. That's one of the first things to like kind of step back, because there are going to be some times that just mistakes happen in life. Okay, am I making this a problem that this thing is happening? For a long time, when my kids were younger, I like having a clean house. I like having a clean room. But, there comes a time when they turn teenagers that they want privacy. And also, two of mine really don't like being that clean. And I had to realize, like, there was a little bit of time I was showing up like not as my best self. And I had to realize this is not a problem that their room is this way. Of course, we have boundaries. There are very minimal baseline, requirements, but realizing this is not a problem. My oldest son also, he only wears shorts. I mean, we're here in Boston. He has like shoveled outside in snow in shorts. And for a long time, and even when he was like a little kid, he would only want to wear short sleeve shirts. And I was like, he needs to wear a long sleeve, all this kind of stuff. And kind of realizing that was one of those times it took me a while to get to, like, is this really a problem? Like, I think it's a problem, but guess what? In my lane, I'm not in his body. And realizing, oh, wait a second, in my lane, I'm going to make sure that, yeah, he has long pants that he could wear, but like, I'm now going to make this isn't my problem. When he's cold, he's going to be able to deal with it. So I think so often we judge other people and their lanes. And I'm not even using the word judge in a necessarily a bad way, but we think somebody else has this problem because it would be a problem for us in our lane. But in reality, it's not really a problem. So those are kind of some simple ways that like, oh, okay, we can create more peace for ourselves. I think then the follow-up question to that is, okay, whose problem is it? Let's say that it's something we determine, okay, this kind of is a problem. Let's like say a child is struggling in a class. I think one of the best ways, of course, when they're younger, we will maybe call teachers and set up parent-teacher conferences or things like that. But as they get older, what I've started doing, and I didn't handle this well with my oldest in a few situations, but with my others, I've really tried to ask them, hey, would you like me to send an email? Like I ask them, like I'm there as a guide and as a support, but I remind myself, this is really their problem and it's in their lane. And they actually probably have better solutions. And in most of the cases, they're like, no, mom, I got it. Like I'm dealing with a teacher on that. And I think in those ways, like I'm projecting the confidence, like they can handle what's going on there. And also they know, okay, mom is there to help me. One of the areas that we have to do our work on, if as parents we're like, oh, whose problem is it? I hear from a lot of people and I hear from my own brain too. Oh no, if they don't get these grades, then they're not going to get to college and like all these things are going to happen. And like, look how much of that we're even just projecting down the highway that we can't even see. But what gets tricky is when we're using things like grades or even maybe a child not going on a mission or something like that, for us to then validate, am I a good mom or a bad mom? And for me to realize, oh, wait, I can't let my child's grades determine if I'm a good mom, right? I have to get back and realize like that's my work to do. So that's where like sometimes that tricky, we realize, oh, the problem I'm making it is that I'm not going to feel good when they've done those things. And then like, oh, okay, then that's my work to do. Because the reality is we don't want hormonal teenagers with not yet developed frontal lobes to really be in charge of our validation and our confidence.
No, we don't. Actually, learning that I was in charge of like deciding whether or not I was a good mom or a good wife didn't have anything to do with anybody else, changed so many things for me in my life.
Right.
It was just that simple shift was huge for me.
Yeah. And then it's a decision, like it's a decision we get to just make, like that there's nothing even outside of us that is going to prove it any other way. Okay. So another question that we want to ask ourselves to get ourselves back in our lane is, am I taking a growth opportunity away from someone else, from my child or someone, if I solve that problem that we've decided maybe is a problem? Like one of the ways I just had to see that myself was my oldest son went off to his first semester of college, was actually study abroad in Ireland. And several months into it, there came a point and I was like, we think he's about to run out of money. And we were willing to give him more money. He had to buy all of his food. He was doing all of his cooking. But I had this like discussion with myself. Okay, this probably is going to be a problem. He's going to need money. But I think it's important now that he's 19. I want him to be the one. I want his lane to be him asking for the money. And so I didn't make it my problem that I had to solve. I waited until he kind of asked for the money because I feel like that was an important responsibility now that has moved over to his lane. And then sure enough, a couple of days later, and then I, Venmoed him some money that I felt like, okay, that's what I want to do kind of from my lane. And like, and so as our kids grow up, we're kind of constantly asking, like, is there something they need to learn? They need to learn here. A year or two ago, I had a situation with my daughter who's an early teen, she was really disappointed because of a situation with kind of presents and stuff. And I found myself like really for several hours, like wanting to solve her disappointment, like wanting to solve her negative emotion about a situation. She was actually handling it really maturely and really fine. But I was like in my lane looking at her pretty sad in her lane. So it was almost like I was about to swerve over to her lane. And I asked myself, like, wait, if I solved this disappointment, is there something that she wouldn't learn? And there was, because there had been a discussion about the gift. There was something that she kind of needed to learn from the situation that I thought, if I go and solve this for her, she might not remember this situation and she might not have learned that she needs to do something different when she's asked about these gifts. So again, us just kind of realizing, other people need to be learning in their lane. I shouldn't be solving their problems, because that's how we learn. Like, I think I hear myself say, oh, this child likes to learn things the hard way. I hear my clients say, oh, they like to learn it the hard way. And then I question that, like, what's the hard way? Well, it's just, we're learning by experience. I've had to learn some things by experience. I didn't, listen to wiser people. Why is that bad? Because we say that as if it's some bad thing. But often, like, learning that way is the way it really sticks. Like, we can fix that pothole in our road and we're not going to have it then again in the future. So I think, realizing, and that again takes, like, there are going to be sometimes we're going to solve the problem and then realizing, oh, wait, next time, like, I really want that to be something that they have to solve. So
I think that just to jump in here, I think that also offers us something to look at too when we're looking at God's lane, right?
Yes.
Because there's so much that we learn from trying to stay out of our children's lane because we want them to learn something. And I think when we can look at God's lane and be like, he obviously has something he wants me to experience here. There's so much that he's trying to teach me and offer me so that I can live the best life here that I can possibly have. Because that's all we want for our children, right? Is for them to learn things so they can experience a beautiful life. And in God's lane, it's the exact same thing.
Right. And he's like, wait, I've put those obstacles there for your child to learn. Like, I've put that for them. So don't take that away from them. I have a bigger plan. There's something else. Your lane is to have faith and hope. And that might be hard for you because it is hard for all of us. That's not always the easiest thing. Control often can seem easier for us because we're just humans and we can't see like what's going on in God's lane. But it is like, that is such a beautiful symbolism and just a way to like look at that, and I think, and as they grow, like, something I've had to do is like realizing, like, where am I helping and where am I trying to control them? Like, and am I doing certain things because I'm afraid that they're going to fail? Like, right? Because there might be, as parents, like, we love them, we're teaching them, like, of course we're going to do things, but as those lanes, as they grow up and we want them to develop responsibility, those are some good questions that help us, like, how do I want to show up? Who do I want to be? Another thing that I hear, clients will come to me and say, well, I just really want a good relationship with my teen. And I ask them, well, what does that mean? And sometimes they'll say something that is about them, the client. Often, though, that's like code for, well, I really want them to like me. I want them to grow up and like me. And that's where we have to really kind of question, well, if that's what's driving in our lane, I want this hormonal teenager that doesn't have anything emotionally developed to like me. Like, we're going to then be crazy people driving all over the lane and to realize, or all over the road, to realize my self-esteem is my lane. Like, it's my job to like me. And I see, even for myself, there's a lot of wasted stress and anxiety in our lives if we're really worried about what our children are going to think. Because I don't know about you, but I don't really want to know what 16-year-olds think about me.
There's a part of me that does, but a part of me that just doesn't even want to go there. So.
Right. Right. And I think the reality is, like, there's a better chance of our children liking us, and there's a better chance of them wanting to be with us when they're adults if we like ourselves. Like if we decide, I like myself, I like my parents, and our kids, they're going to respect us if they see that we aren't doing things just for their approval. And then the last question, and this to me is the most grounding question. This is something I'm asking myself daily. Who do I want to be? Like that question gets us back into our lane in every situation. Like I said, my son just did a study abroad, and I had to check in with myself before I would send him a text. Of course, my mind would go to worry about different things. And I had to make sure, like, I want hope driving my car, not fear. If I was about to text him or call him, I'd be like, wait, like, is this hope or is this fear? Who do I want to be? I want to be hopeful. And then I would wait until somehow that emotion was what was driving my inquiry. And sometimes that then meant I didn't ask about whatever it was, but to really make sure, okay, I want to be someone that is really hopeful. Our family just went on a really big trip over Christmas. And I, had to ask myself, like, do I want to be stressed and anxious and ornery? Or do I want to be relaxed and really enjoyable? Because our kids, they're going to enjoy life more if they see their parents enjoying life. So that's just one of those questions. Our kids are going to be stressed. There's going to be anxiety in the world. Does that mean that we need to be stressed and anxious about their anxiety, right? That brings us back into our lane. I did have one of my children filled out the application for the wrong year. Like, do I want to be critical or do I want to be supportive and like full of hope? For some of my clients, when maybe their families need financial support, and so the mom is making a change in her life and going back to work. Okay, do you want to be resentful and the martyr, or do you want to be confident and like be the hero here? So just asking ourselves, like, who do I want to be? It gets us out of everyone else's head. It gets us back into our lane. It reminds our brain, I have a lot less control than I think I do, and gets us back to like where we have our control and how are we going to think about these things going on for our kids. And that's in my lane. Who do I want to be? Do I want to be, again, judgmental and critical, or do I want to have like some curiosity and to try to make some connection with this child? And I think, ultimately that who do I want to be? It comes down to, I want to be someone who uses the atonement to fix the cracks in my lane. Like if that's all these things that I want for my kids, like I then want to be that type of person in my lane. And if they can see that, there's just a better chance that that's what they're going to be willing to do in their lane. And that is, I think, the ultimate question. And that's really all we have control over.
So good. And so true. And I think bringing the atonement in and recognizing that, like, using the atonement is in our lane, right? Using
right.
Christ's atonement in our lives and using him as, as our example and somebody to model our life after is our lane. And
right.
And using him as an example also really does show us how to stay in our lane and how to stay out of somebody else's lane.
Yes.
So good. Well, we could have this discussion all day, and I love this analogy so much. It's so helpful and such a great visual. I want you to share with everybody where they can find more of you.
Yes. So, my website is HeidiBenjaminsen.com. I have a podcast, Confidence Coaching with Heidi Benjaminsen. I work with clients privately, and they have private Zoom sessions with me weekly, and we work through all of this. And it is so amazing. It's a beautiful gift for me to be able to see other women changing themselves, and then to see that effect that it does have on their families and that it does have on their children. It's just absolutely beautiful. So yeah.
It is a powerful ripple effect for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Well, Heidi, thank you so much. I've loved it. It's great conversation. I love the questions. I think those are really powerful tools for just bringing us back to the center, aligning ourselves with who we
Yeah.
are and who we want to be. And I just appreciate those so much. So
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely. Good. Thank you. So glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, everybody go find Heidi, and we'll link to all these things in the show notes. And thanks for being here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Hey, we just wanted to thank you for spending part of your day here with us at Latter-day Life Coaches and being part of this conversation. Share this with your friends so that you can have a conversation with them on this topic as well. And as always, subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Have a good one, my friends.